Articles from the Labor Standard by Friedrich Engels. First article, To the Working Men of Europe in 1877, Part 3, published March 17, 1878. In the preceding article, we have already foreshadowed the principal facts of interest connected with the history of the working class movement in Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and Belgium. Still, something remains to be told. In Spain, the movement had rapidly extended between 1868 and 1872, when the International boasted of more than 30,000 paying members. But all this was more apparent than real, the result more of momentary excitement brought on by the unsettled political state of the country than by real intellectual progress. Involved in the Cantonalist (Federalist Republican) rising of 1873, the Spanish International was crushed along with it. For a time it continued in the shape of a secret society, of which, no doubt, a nucleus is still in existence. But as it has never given any sign of life save sending 3 delegates to the Ghent Congress, we are driven to the conclusion that these 3 delegates represent the Spanish working class much in the same way as the 3 tailors of Tooley Street represented the people of England. And whenever a political revolution will give the workingmen of Spain the possibility of again playing an active part, we may safely predict that the new departner will not come from these, quote, anarchist spouters, but from the small body of intelligent and energetic workmen who, in 1872, remained true to the International and who now bide their time instead of playing at secret conspiracy. In Portugal, the movement remained always free from the, quote, anarchist taint, and proceeded upon the same rational basis as in most other countries. The Portuguese workmen had numerous international sections and trades unions. They held a very successful Congress in January 1877 and had an excellent weekly, quote, O Protesto, the Protest. Still, they were too hampered by adverse laws, restrictive of the press and of the right of association and public meeting. They kept struggling on for all that, and are now holding another Congress at Oporto, which will afford them an opportunity of showing the world that the working class of Portugal takes its proper share in the great and universal struggle for the emancipation of labor. The workmen of Italy, too, are much obstructed in their action by middle-class legislation. A number of special laws enacted under the pretext of suppressing brigandage and widespread secret brigand organizations, laws which give the government immense arbitrary powers, are unscrupulously applied to workmen's associations. Their more prominent members, equally with brigands, are subjected to police supervision and banishment without judge or jury. Still the movement proceeds, and, best sign of life, its center of gravity has been shifted from the venerable but half-dead cities of Romagna to the busy industrial and manufacturing towns of the north, a change which secured the predominance of the real working-class element over the host of, quote, anarchist interlopers of middle-class origin who previously had taken the lead. The workmen's clubs and trades unions, ever broken up and dissolved by the government, are ever reformed under new names. The proletarian press, though many of its organs are but short-lived in consequence of the prosecutions, fines, and sentences of imprisonment against the editors, springs up afresh after every defeat, and, in spite of all obstacles, counts several papers of comparatively old standing. Some of these organs, mostly ephemeral ones, still profess, quote, anarchist doctrines, but that fraction has given up all pretensions to rule the movement and is gradually dying out, along with the Mazzinian or middle-class Republican Party, and every inch of ground lost by these 2 factions is so much ground won by the real and intelligent working class movement. In Belgium, too, the center of gravity of working class action has been shifted, and this action itself has undergone an important change in consequence. Up to 1875, this center lay in the French-speaking part of the country, including Brussels, which is half French and half Flemish. The movement was, during this period, strongly influenced by Proudhonist doctrines, which also enjoined abstention from political interference, especially from elections. There remained then nothing but strikes, generally repressed by bloody intervention of the military, and meetings in which the old stock phrases were constantly repeated. The workpeople got sick of this, and the whole movement gradually fell asleep. But since 1875, the manufacturing towns of the Flemish-speaking portion entered into the struggle with a greater and, as was soon to be proved, a new spirit. In Belgium, there are no factory laws whatever to limit the hours of labor of women or children, and the first cry of the factory workers of Ghent and neighborhood were for protection for their wives and children, who were made to slave 15 and more hours a day in the cotton mills. The opposition of the Proudhonist doctrinaires, who considered such trifles as far beneath the attention of men occupied with transcendent revolutionism, was of no avail and was gradually overcome. The demand of legal protection for factory children became one of the points of the Belgian working class platform, and with it was broken the spell which hitherto had tabooed political action. The example of the Germans did the rest, and now the Belgian workmen, like those of Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, Portugal, Hungary, Austria, and part of Italy, are forming themselves into a political party, distinct from, and opposed to, all other political parties, and aiming at the conquest of their emancipation by whatever political action the situation may require. The great mass of Swiss workmen, the German-speaking portion of them, had for some years been formed into a, quote, workmen's confederation, which at the end of 1878 counted above 5,000 paying members. There was alongside of them another organization, the Grudley Society, originally formed by the middle-class radicals for the spread of radicalism amongst workmen and peasants. But gradually social democratic ideas penetrated into this widely spread association and finally conquered it. In 1877, both these societies entered into an alliance, almost a fusion, for the purpose of organizing a Swiss political labor party. And with such vigor did they act that they carried, at the national vote, the new Swiss factory law, of all existing factory acts, the one which is most favorable to the workpeople. They are now organizing a vigilant supervision to secure its due execution against the loudly proclaimed ill will of the mill owners. The, quote, anarchists, from their superior revolutionary standpoint, as a matter of course violently opposed all this action, denouncing it as a piece of arrant treason against what they call, quote, the revolution, but as they number 200 at the outside, and here as elsewhere, are but a general staff of officers without an army, this made no difference. The program of the Swiss Workingmen's Party is almost identical with that of the Germans, only too identical, having adopted even some of its more imperfect and confused passages. But the mere wording of the program matters little, so long as the spirit which dominates the movement is of the right sort. The Danish workmen entered the lists about 1870 and at first made very rapid progress. By an alliance with a small peasant proprietors' party, amongst which they succeeded in spreading their views, they attained considerable political influence, so much so that the, quote, United Left, of which the peasant party formed the nucleus, for a number of years had the majority in Parliament. But there was more show than solidity in this rapid growth of the movement. One day it was found out that two of the leaders had disappeared after squandering the money collected for party purposes from the working men. The scandal caused by this was extreme, and the Danish movement has not yet recovered from the discouragement consequent upon it. Anyhow, if the Danish Workingmen's Party is now proceeding in a more unobtrusive way than before, there is every reason to believe that it is gradually replacing the ephemeral and apparent domination over the masses, which it has now lost, by a more real and more lasting influence. In Austria and Hungary, the working class has the greatest difficulties to contend with. Political liberty, as far as the press, meetings, and associations are concerned, is there reduced to the lowest level consistent with a sham constitutional monarchy. A code of laws of unheard of elasticity enables the government to obtain convictions against even the mildest expression of the demands and interests of the working class. And yet the movement there, as well as elsewhere, goes on irrepressibly. The principal centers are the manufacturing districts of Bohemia, Vienna, and Pest. Workingmen's periodicals are published in the German, the Bohemian, and the Hungarian languages. From Hungary, the movement has spread to Serbia, where, before the war, a weekly newspaper was published in the Serbian language, but when the war broke out, the paper was simply suppressed. Thus, wherever we look in Europe, the working class movement is progressing, not only favorably but rapidly, and what is more, everywhere in the same spirit. Complete harmony is restored, and with it constant and regular intercourse, in one way or another, between the workmen of the different countries. The men who founded in 1864 the International Workingmen's Association, who held high its banner during years of strife, first against external, then against internal foes, until political necessities, even more than intestine feuds, brought on disruption and seeming retirement. These men can now proudly exclaim, quote, "The International has done its work. It has fully attained its grand aim, the union of the proletariat of the whole world in the struggle against their oppressors." You have reached the end of Articles from the Labor Standard by Friedrich Engels, first article, To the Working Men of Europe in 1877, Part 3. Click on the links at the end of this video to go to the playlist or the next chapter if it's available. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe.